Hello, readers. This is Justin's 52 Books, where I discuss my selections for the 52 Book Club's 2023 Reading Challenge. I'm doing something special this year. I'm only reading female-written science fiction for my reading challenge. So all 52 books, actually it's going to be a little bit more because I'm reading some sequels in with the actual book, but it's all going to be science fiction, all written by women. This is week 5, and I'm talking about prompt 5, with a book with a title that starts with the letter I. My selection for this prompt was Infomocracy, written by Malka Older and published in 2016. Over the last couple of weeks, I've spoken at length about the letter prompts and how even arbitrary criteria can lead to interesting thoughts about books and the next book you're going to read. A great example of that was last year when the letter criteria was E and F. That gave me a moment to sit down with my to-be-read piles in multiple places, both with physical books and with digital lists and the library for later list and all that stuff, and look at what I've ever wanted to read with a letter E, or that starts with letter E. I'm very thankful for that, because that drove me to read The Exorcist, finally, rather than read the newest book over and over and over, which we kind of, book people sometimes get trapped into because there's always new best of lists coming out all the time. Best of the year, best books you've missed so far this year, that kind of stuff. It's nice to get out of that cycle of reading the best newest and go back and read something really great from a long time ago. And such is the case with the letter I here. Infomocracy was one of those books that made a flash, and we're not talking about the 70s like Exorcist, but this came out in 2016. So its profile has ebbed a little bit. I mean, if you're going to write a book about elections in 2016, that's bound to get people's attention. But like I said, the profile has ebbed a little bit. There's been a couple sequels as well, and I don't think they catch people's attention as much as this did when it came out. So I was very glad to have that letter prompt to push me to evaluate the books that I wanted to read at some point, so that I put it on a list and come up with letter I. So it's a good book, and I struggled with it at the beginning, but I'm really glad to have read it. The book follows 3 main characters and their dealings with a political system based on the concept of micro-democracy. And I'm not going to do that justice here, but I'll talk about it a little bit. Its very basic description is that it's a political system that gets rid of geographic countries and political dividers, or electoral dividers, in favor of a system that divides people, or divides the population into groups of 100,000 people, and they call them sentinels. Could be very big if you're in a very rural area. The Sentinel's going to be big. If you're in North Dakota, there's 600,000 people in North Dakota, so there's 6 Sentinels. But if you're in a major metropolitan area, it could be different neighborhoods. And you and these 100,000 neighbors of yours all vote on not so much a political party, but a government or a governing body. It feels a lot like political parties, at least in the United States, but they call them governments in Infomocracy. One of the main characters works for one of the governments that is trying to come to power, called Policy First. One of the other main characters is a security specialist working for an independent election administrating organization, which is known as Information. Information's like a public utility only for making this system run, making the government run, making social media run, making the network run, making the news run, and all that stuff. And it's a little, and I'm sure that people who would be bugged by that, and it's a little big brothery, but I remember a long time ago complaining about Microsoft should be a public utility. So I don't know if I think that's a bad idea, but regardless, one of the main characters works for Information, and Information does that. And then the third main character doesn't approve of the Sentinel system and is trying to work against it. The book takes place something like 60 years in the future, and not all governments have gone to this Sentinel system, but enough have that whatever government gains the supermajority, so enough of the Sentinels go with one government so that they can make all the decisions. That government becomes pretty much the government of the world. or at least the world that ascribes to the Sentinel system. The governments can be made up of any kind of organization. Some are idyllic. I talked about policy first. One of the main characters works for policy first, and it's just we want to govern, or at least that's what they tell themselves. Some of the governments are corporate. I think Philip Morris is discussed. I think Nestle's discussed, and they hold a major amount of Sentinels. And I can kind of see that. It's a very cyberpunk idea of having the corporations being the government, but it's a very business first idea of your employer being your government. And then some of the Sentinels are borderline fascistic or radically national, like Heritage or Liberty. The idea of the Sentinel system is to give the power to choose your elected officials and your government based not on your geography, but on what the people want. And then people can move freely between Sentinels. That's the idea. And it's been going on for 29 years, and the election is every 10 years. So right when the book starts, they're coming up on the next election. Some things I liked about it. Older is doing a lot of character setup, a lot of world building, and she's doing it all simply to put forward an idea and speculate on how this idea of microdemocracy would work in a somewhat realistic way. From that perspective, she's contributing in a major way to a tradition of science fiction that has been going on for years. Asimov did this all the time. Probably not a whole lot of lines of connection between Malka Older and Isaac Asimov, but think of it like this. The book Caves of Steel, it's a mystery novel in a world set with robots. And Asimov is just doing that in order to say, what would life be like with robots? Same thing, the master of hard science fiction, Greg Egan, wrote Schild's Ladder about a mathematical experiment that starts consuming the universe. But it's a universe where the singularity exists, so people can upload their personas into a computer and transmit. He's doing all of that in order to ask the question, in my opinion. People might disagree with this, but in my opinion, he's doing all that in order to ask the question, what is the importance of a place if you can be anywhere? That's an important question, and he's using all that world building and all those characters in order to make a realistic question out of a concept, just like Older is doing here. Big ideas put forth in a semi-realistic scenario and narrative, and that's what science fiction is all about, in my opinion. And Infomocracy does that, and does that well, and I really liked that. Some things I didn't care for so much. The book is a tough sell at the start. Political operatives talking about an election. I can find that on the news, whether I want to see it or not, and I'm not really into that. I care about politics, I care about what's important, I care about what people are doing, but the endless yammering on and on and on just is a Ouroboros eating itself. So I'm not entirely sure when I became interested in it, but I know at the beginning is like, oh man, I don't care. But I think Older moves the events of the book along quickly enough that I was in for the long haul pretty early in. But there was some really big concerns initially. Another issue that I found, and this says a lot about me, and I'm not exactly proud of this, but it's worth talking about because it's of concern. There are two female Asian characters, Mishima and Yoriko, and they couldn't be more different. One's for all intents and purposes, a ninja, only in the most realistic, best sense possible. She's a security operative. That's Mishima, and Yoriko is a cab driver trying to cling on to information so that she can sell information. She's, for lack of a better word, a bit of a bottom feeder. But so I know I got the physical book here, but I was listening to this on audiobook. And maybe it's because I wasn't reading the names and queuing in on the spelling, but I got them very confused at the beginning. And I'm not proud of that. Because what that essentially says to me about me is that I'm able to assume that any book I'm reading is going to have only one female Asian character. And the idea that there are two Well, that's just too many to not get them confused. And that's disappointing. That makes me disappointed in myself. I figured it out, but it took me longer than I should have. But it was disappointing to realize. I don't offer this up as a way. I'm not trying to open myself up for criticism, and this isn't trying to make broader points about me or anything. It's just something I've learned about myself reading the book, and it deserves noting. So yeah, I am glad to have spent the time with the book, though I didn't think I was going to at the beginning. And we'll definitely be reading the rest of the Sentinel books. Sentinel Cycle, I believe it's called. Older has a lot to say in Infomocracy, and I'm glad to have spent the time with her. Other books for the prompt. The prompt is, again, books that start with the letter I. Other books that I thought about reading, or that one could read, or that I would suggest. One I thought about reading and kind of wish I had, Infinity's Web by Shelia Finch, about alternate worlds. I have not read that, but was really considering reading that. I think I heard about it on a podcast featuring Lisa Yazek. I'm not entirely sure if it was if she had suggested that or someone around her, but Infinity's Web by Shelia Finch. I'll probably be checking that out some other time. A book about well, it's an addiction allegory by Anna Kaven called it's a book called Ice. I can suggest that. That is a good dark book from I think the 40s. Not exactly enjoyable, but interesting and very literary science fiction. And then, not written by a woman, but Inverted World by Christopher Priest is one of my favorite conceptual science fiction stories. You have the world, well, you have the inverted world, and the idea of the inverted world is that you have to stay right here, or you get gravitation will suck you up here or suck you down here. And so it's all about people trying to keep a city that is being, well, the world is moving this way. They're trying to keep a city right there, so they have to move it on tracks, and they have to scout out, down here and down here without becoming stretched or flattened. Weird idea, cool idea. Enjoyable book that you're not going to read anything like that anywhere else. Inverted World by Christopher Priest. Not the best ending. It wraps it up real quick. Well, here's why it happened. But very enjoyable and worth reading. I can definitely suggest Inverted World by Christopher Priest. Thanks for watching me talk about my thoughts on Infomocracy, written by Malka Older. This has been week 5 of Justin's 52 books, and I was talking about Prompt 5, a book that starts with the letter I. For more information on the 52 Book Club, you can check them out on their website, the52bookclub.com. You can check them out on Instagram, Goodreads, and Facebook. I'm pretty active on the Facebook comment section, so maybe I'll see you there. You can also check me out on Goodreads and on Storygraph, Justin's 52 Books. I hope to see you next week for Prompt 6, a book with less than 200 pages. And they are pages about life on a desolate planet. Who doesn't want to read about being stuck on a desolate planet? Until then, happy reading.